Welcome everyone to another episode of A Dark Tale, where the stories get real dark, real fast. And let's roll the intro. So welcome everyone to another episode of A Dark Tale, where we share with you 3 stories for this episode. And today's episode have stories from a variety of people lah. And let's dive into the first story of tonight, where it's from an interior designer that is based in Singapore. So basically, you guys know about interior designers. They are usually the first person that moves into your house in that way, where that person stays in your house more than you do, because he's there managing the project, seeing how things go. The contractors are the first one that is there. So if you are buying a resale flat, usually there are previous owners and you don't know what the previous owner has done to the place before. So roughly that's the story for tonight. And let's dive into the first story, which is from the interior designer industry. So, he said, "Hi, I want to share a story with you. My name is Marcus and I work as an interior designer here in Singapore. I want to tell you about a project I handled a while ago. It was easily one of the weirdest experiences of my career. But once I explain what happened, you will understand why. I was assigned to a young first-time buyer couple who had just secured their first resale unit. They wanted to live in a prime area, but they had a tight budget. That explains why they bought this specific flat. When I first stepped inside to inspect the place, I was honestly shocked that anyone would buy a house in that state. The entire interior was extremely old and run down. The whole flat had this heavy, musky smell hanging in the air. But being professional, I didn't say anything negative. I just walked them through what needed to be done, got their feedback on the designs, and kicked off the project. So for renovation, hacking is always the very first phase. So we started breaking down all the old building cupboards, the fixtures, and on one of those hacking days, while I was on site overseeing the workers, one of the hacking guys called me into the master bedroom. He pointed to the bottom of an old wardrobe, where he had found a small locked chest that looked like an antique treasure box. And this treasure box was secured with a rusty padlock. So what I did was I snapped a picture and texted the new owners to ask if they wanted to keep it. And as expected, they said no and told us to throw it away. But just as I was about to order my workers to dump it, my own curiosity kicked in. I called one of my Malaysian contractors into the room and asked him if I should cut it open. So you know, when renovation there is like different teams. Some team is the electrical team, the carpentry team, the tiler. There's a lot of different kind of roles that are in the renovation industry. So he saw one of his contractors and he called the contractor back into the room. So he asked if, should I open this box or not? Because there's a padlock on it, right? And since the previous owner didn't take it away and the new owners don't want it, like what should I do? So his reply is the most Malaysian thing that I've ever heard. He just shrugged and said, I don't know lor, up to you. You want to see what's inside, then you open lah. So he handed me a heavy pair of cutters, and with one hard squeeze, the padlock basically snapped right through the middle. So after breaking the padlock, I lifted the lid, and the first thing I saw was inside was a knife wrapped in a yellow cloth, which I later learned was called a kris, along with paper drawings that looked like those talismans and a few creepy looking amulets. The moment my Malaysian contractor saw the contents, he immediately stepped back. He said, "Hey Marcus, this one cannot play one. Close back, don't open anymore." But because I'm more modern and non-superstitious, it didn't really scare me. If anything, it just made me more curious about what was inside this little box. I snapped a few pictures on my phone, and after I just closed the chest and carried on supervising the site for the rest of the day. So when nightfall, I was back at home and I uploaded the photos to AI to check what these items were and if they had any value to them. And to my surprise, the search result showed that if the artifacts were genuine, they could be worth a lot of money. A rare authentic kris alone could easily fetch thousands of dollars on the collector's market. The moment I saw those numbers, my heart started racing. I couldn't risk anyone else at the site finding out, taking it or throwing it away the next morning before I arrived. So I got up, got dressed, grabbed my keys and drove straight back to the flat. By the time I reached the block, it was almost 10 p.m. Just as I was putting my key to the unit's front gate lock, an elderly neighbour, an ama from next door, stepped out into the corridor. She looked angry and began scolding me, saying that renovation work wasn't allowed at night. She complained that there had been a non-stop heavy banging and loud footsteps coming from inside the flat. And all of this had just stopped literally a minute before I came up. I immediately apologized and tried to calm her down, assuring her that no work was being done. So to prove it, there was only one way. I unlocked the door and swung it wide open to show her the empty dark house. The moment her eyes saw the pitch black flat, her face drained of colour. Without saying another word, she turned around and ran straight back into her house. She knew as well as I did that if the flat was completely dark and empty, nothing human could have been making those loud pounding noises. At that moment, however, I was too focused on the potential payout of the items to care about a complaining neighbour. In my line of work, dealing with upset neighbours is like a daily occurrence. So I stepped into the flat. It was practically pitch black, so I clicked on the single working room light and walked into the bedroom. My heart sank when I saw that the cabinet door was already wide open. Panic hit me. I thought someone had beaten me to it. But when I checked inside, the chest was still sitting right there. I pulled out the chest, opened it, and began examining the contents inside. So I started with carefully moving the yellow cloth aside and lifted the kris out of its holder to check its shape and design. Looking closely under the dim bulb, I noticed there was like these dark, crusty patches on the metal blade. At first I thought it was like rust, but as I stared at it and used the nail of my thumb to scratch at the residue, I realized that it was dried blood. Suddenly, a sharp piercing pain pricked the palm of my hand, so intense that I gasped and dropped the kris to the floor. For a split second, as it hit the ground, I could have sworn I saw the blade vibrating on its own. So when he felt the pain and then he dropped, he saw it for just a split second. My chest tightened and I quickly put the kris back into its holder, set it back in the chest and glanced at the amulets the next thing. When I was looking at the amulets, a heavy, suffocating discomfort began to settle over the room. And what made it worse was a sudden downpour that started pounding against the exterior windows. So basically, when he was opening the items and looking at the knife, and after he dropped the knife, he started hearing rain from the windows. So it was suddenly having a huge downpour with thunder and lightning in the background. So this was very weird to him, but at the same time, he closed the chest and he sit there in the darkness while contemplating whether I should actually take it with me to sell. So something about the atmosphere suddenly just felt horribly wrong. Since it was pouring rain and my car was parked quite a distance away, I decided to wait out the storm inside the flat. To pass the time, I started searching online about the spiritual consequences of keeping or selling this type of occult items. So he started, reading in AI like what will happen if I keep this and I bring it along with me, what will happen if I sold it, something like that lah, when he was reading in the AI. And the deeper I read, the more I understood why my contractor had backed away earlier. The articles warned that if an item carrying a dark energy binding gets attached to you, the entity tied to it will follow you for the rest of your life. So reading that was my wake-up call. I realized no amount of money was worth bringing that kind of energy into my life. I decided to leave everything right where it was, but just as I put the items back in the box and stood up to leave the room, the hair on my arms stood on its end. So now that I wasn't hyper-focused on the chest and selling and getting the money, I finally registered the noise echoing through the flat. So after he closed everything and he got up, he started to hear footsteps. So take note that he is alone in the unit and the only light was in the bedroom. Outside was completely pitch black, but he heard footsteps pacing rapidly all around the living room and the hallway outside the bedroom. So I forced myself to walk to the bedroom doorway, took a deep breath and swung it open. The living room was completely empty. The sound vanished the exact second the door opened. So when you were hearing the sound, the footsteps, the moment he opened the door, everything just went silent. So he did the smart thing. He said, I didn't wait around to find out what it was. I sprinted out of the flat, slammed the main gate shut, locked everything up and ran down the stairs to my car. The next morning, I went back to the site early and ran into the neighbor, the Amma again. This time, I spoke to her calmly and asked her about the flat's history. She lowered her voice and told me that the previous tenant was actually an old man who actively practiced dark occult rituals in the house. Throughout the years, neighbors would constantly hear strange chanting, unexplainable noises coming from the unit late at night, even though he had lived completely alone. They would often hear him having full detailed conversations with an unseen presence in his living room, speaking out loud and pausing as if waiting for a response before continuing. So like those neighbors beside, maybe on top beside him or below him, they could hear him maybe talking like, yeah, this thing very hard to do. Yeah, you're right. So that was what they heard every day. And she added that he was actually a well-known practitioner in certain circles, and visitors would occasionally come from far away to seek his services. Learning that confirmed every fear I had. I pulled up my phone and searched for the proper way to dispose of dangerous occult items. One of the suggestions was to bury or discard them deep in a dense forest, far away from residential areas. So I wanted to be responsible and dispose of it properly instead of just throwing it in the dustbin. So later that afternoon, I packed the chest into a dark bag, drove all the way up to the quiet forest trail in Sembawang and dumped it deep in the thick forest where no one would ever stumble upon it. Eventually, the renovation was completed without any further issues, and the young couple happily moved into their new home. But to this day, they had no idea about the true history of that flat or what was sitting inside the bedroom cabinet on the day we hacked it down. and as far as I'm concerned, they will never hear it from me. So that was the first story of tonight, and let's go through it one by one lah. So basically, this is someone from the interior design industry, and he got this project where it was a cheap rundown unit, but the buyers, like basically willing buyers to buy that place because it was in a prime area. And the moment he got into the place, he already felt that the vibe was different. And I think the first thing that I know is when you get these mysterious items or occult items, if you have a pulling to it, that means like you really want to see it, you want to open it, you want to touch it, you should never ever do it, because it's basically the thing calling on to you. So like him, he could just throw it away because it was just an old like chest, treasure chest. He could have just shake it and just like, I just throw it away lah. But he had this strong feeling to actually open it up, and that's the first mistake, because you should never ever open it up. Then came the second mistake where he tried to sell the items. Maybe he doesn't know much about it lah, because honestly there's a lot of people that don't know about occult items and practices. So if they see that they can make money, then why not, right? But honestly guys, don't ever do that, because you don't know what's the history of the item. Maybe you pass it on to someone that is more knowledgeable before selling it lah. And after that, when he went to the flat and got the history of the flat, it was a man that was a spiritual practitioner and doing occult practices down there. So I don't know, like if let's say you are the buyers of the flat and you don't know anything, right? Because it's your first flat, you don't know how moving into a flat is, or what are the signs to look out for. Would you want to know about these kind of things, or would you rather not just know? Because if you rather just not know, then it's like a peace of mind. But if anything happens during your stay over there, because you're going to stay there for at least 5 to 10 years, right? And if you start getting occurrences and you don't know what happened before that, it's going to be slightly more difficult. But if you know the history and something happens, at least you can redirect it, right? So what is your guys' thoughts? Do you prefer not knowing it, or would you prefer just knowing it and basically knowing what's going to happen lah? So that was our first story of tonight, and this is quite interesting because I have never heard a story from an interior designer lah. Okay, sorry guys, I took a quick water break because my voice is like super dry. But anyway, I would like to just before going on to the second story, thank all the new subscribers again, because there has been a video, I think it's episode 11, where it's about Tengah residents, and I think a lot of you guys love it because the video is finally gaining traction. And honestly, if you guys are from Tengah, I want you guys to share your stories with me. And if you guys know, always go down to my TikTok, which is a Dark Tale, and then tell me your submit the DMs over there. So submit your confession to the DM, and then I'll read it out for you. So basically, if you guys are new here, what I do is that when people give me stories, I'll usually try to dig in a bit more, because if you give me a story that it's like, okay, I saw a ghost and then blah blah blah, then it's going to be a short story. It's going to be like a 1 minute, 2 minute story. But the more information I get, I can form a storyline for the audience, and then I can add in a bit of conversation like I did just now, so that you guys get the real feel of how it feels like to be in that situation lah. And anyway, I would like to thank also every one of the comments that is coming in right now, because your feedback is very, very important to me. Because honestly, I saw a feedback about the music being too loud. I do realize that, but when I use these headphones, the music is not loud at all. But after I export it to YouTube and then I wear my AirPods, I realized that it's super loud. So I'm trying to do a bit of the music and try to reduce the music a bit lah. And the reason I use the background music is because it's something that is slightly different. Usually there's no music, there's no sound, and it's just people telling stories. But I wanted to have a bit of the sound effects, the music, to get everyone in the mood and have that experience lah. So that's about it. If you guys got any more feedback, do remember to comment down below. And for the new subscribers, at 1,000 subscribers, which is not that far away, I will do a challenge that any of you guys want me to do. Meaning to say that if you want me to explore somewhere, but let's keep it in Singapore lah. Let's not go overseas. Maybe you want me to explore a grave. Maybe you want me to do some kind of no, okay. I'm not doing any kind of ritual lah. But if you guys want me to do some exploring, maybe at a certain place, you can comment down below, or you can actually just DM me if you don't want people to know, like you want to gatekeep that place. You can just DM me, because all these stories are from DMs, and I usually filter out the stories and also filter out who is actually telling the truth lah. Because if let's say you tell me that there is this abandoned building at somewhere and I go there and there is not, then it's a waste of time. So of course I don't want to do that lah. And let's not dwell too much, but again I would like to thank all the new subscribers for subscribing, and hope you guys like every single video so that the video gets more traction, I can get more views, and I can do more bigger things for you guys. Because basically this channel is made for me to communicate with the community lah, which is you guys. So let's move on to the second story of tonight. And this second story is very interesting as well, because it's from a sailor, meaning someone that is in the marine industry. So if you guys have been in ships before, I personally haven't been in ships. I have been on those road show, as you call it, where you can go up and see how the ship is like. But honestly, it's super duper claustrophobic for me. So for those guys that are out in sea maybe for 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, I really salute you guys for the effort that you put in on your work, because I think it requires a lot of dedication to leave your family and live in that confined space for 6 months. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of stories that nobody tell. So let's go on to the second story of tonight, and let's hear what this guy has to say for his personal experiences. So what he said is that hi ADT. Oh, actually it's quite nice, the short form. So he said, hi ADT, I have been binge watching your videos recently and following your channel closely. They've been super entertaining, so I hope you keep making them, hopefully, and thank you. A little bit about myself is I work in the offshore marine industry, which means I spend most of my time out at sea on large ships. Watching your channel somehow satisfies my craving for the paranormal, since my work schedule never gives me the time to explore this kind of stuff on my own. I want to share 2 experiences that happened to me right in the middle of the ocean. The first incident happened down in the belly of the vessel. So I work in the ship's engine room, and it's out basically in the middle of the sea lah. We have strict shift duties where sometimes one person is assigned to go down into the lower decks to conduct routine checks on the machines. On this particular night though, it was my turn. So I got up, I pushed open this heavy steel door. I'm guessing those the ones that can lock and unlock. I pushed open the heavy steel door and stepped out into the gantry platform. The engine room on a ship is massive and loud, and is full of blind spots. And as I glanced across the metal walkway, I caught sight of someone standing at the far corner of the platform. I froze immediately, feeling a bit confused. At that hour of the night, there was no reason for anyone else to be down there. I called out to him, but obviously got no response. The roar of the engines meant we all had to wear heavy noise cancelling ear muffs while on duty. But of course I couldn't just ignore him. As the duty engineer on shift, If anything went wrong or if someone got injured down there, I would be held fully responsible. So I began walking down the narrow path towards him. And as I got closer, I could see he was wearing the standard work overalls. So I assumed that he had to be one of the crewmates lah. I waved my hand and shouted, "Hello!" like trying to get his attention. And as I approached him, the moment I called out, him or slash the figure suddenly just moved. He didn't walk, but he glided away from me at an unnaturally fast speed, turning sharp around a metal corridor ahead. So panicking, I jogged down the walkway after him, rounding the exact same corner. Just seconds difference lah. The corridor was a complete dead end. He had vanished into thin air. I scrambled to check the heavy steel watertight exit doors along the passageway to see if he had slipped through one of them. But every single wheel latch was bolted shut from the inside. There was no way anyone could have opened the door, stepped through and sealed it back up in 2 seconds, because that was the difference in the timing he took to jog and catch up after him. At that moment, a heavy ice cold pit formed in my stomach. Realizing I was completely alone down there with whatever that was, I turned around, rushed through my equipment checks as fast as humanly possible, and practically sprinted back up to the main deck. The next morning during breakfast, I brought it up to the few senior crew members. To my surprise, they just casually laughed it off. They told me that seeing unexplainable things in the lower deck was completely normal out at sea. Over the decades, the maritime industry had seen countless tragic cases. Workers dying in horrific machine accidents, workers falling overboard into the dark ocean in the middle of the night. The worst part, my colleagues explained, is that out in international waters, some of these deaths aren't even officially reported. In certain cases, if a vessel is weeks away from port, keeping a body isn't always possible, so things get buried at sea. They told me what I saw was either the restless energy of someone who had lost their life at sea, or an entity taking the form of a crewman to lure duty officers into the isolated corners of the ship. They reassured me that as long as I didn't follow it into restricted areas, I didn't have to worry, that it was just part of life out on the water. And that was my first wake-up call. But my second experience was even worse because it almost cost me my life. So it was another night out at sea, long after dark. I was standing alone on the open exterior deck, just looking out at the moon and stars, taking in the fresh air. Out of nowhere, floating across the pitch black water from a distance, I heard the voice of a woman singing. At first, I panicked slightly, thinking someone had fallen overboard and was crying out for help. But as I listened closely, the voice wasn't distress. It was impossibly calm, beautiful and melodic. So basically, it probably something like this lah. So you probably heard something in a line of So that was probably something that he heard. As I stood there by the railing, the soft humming grew louder and louder and louder, as if whatever was singing was gliding directly towards the hull of the ship. grabbed my heavy duty flashlight and shone the beam down into the water below, but there was nothing there. Just black ocean swell, basically the black ocean crashing against the ship. Then right next to my ear, I heard a faint airy whisper. It wasn't singing anymore. The voice was directly beside me, but the voice was saying to ask me to jump into the water and join her. So basically, after he heard the humming, he felt the whisper of something telling him, "Come down and join me. Come down and join me. Why not just climb over? Just join me right now." The voice was so intoxicating and hypnotic that for a split second, my mind went completely blank. I felt like I was in a total daze, feeling this overwhelming, irrational urge to just climb over and just see who is this, because the voice was so hypnotizing and I just wanted to find out who this lady was. But thankfully, I don't know if it was divine intervention or pure survival instinct, I managed to snap out of the trance at the very last second. I stumbled back and screamed out, "No, no, 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 no." The instant the word left my mouth, everything just disappeared like this. The singing, the humming, the whisper, everything just stopped, leaving only the sound of the wind and the engine hum. I didn't hesitate. I sprinted back into the living quarters, locked the heavy doors behind me, and stayed inside for the rest of the night. So working offshore has been a massive learning lesson for me. The ocean is vast, ancient, and completely merciless. There were so many dark things lurking out in international waters, some of which I've seen and some of which I can't even share. Thank you for letting me tell my story. So this second story is about the sailor and his experience. So the first story that he said, so it was a two-part story lah. The first experience he ever had was actually seeing another person in the same overalls, basically like he's back working his shift. But if you think about it, that person probably died on the ship and he's just returning back to duty to take over his shift. This is like basically like residual energy where the person comes over and over and over again, and I think it's just his bad luck that on that particular timing that he saw the entity. So he was trying to chase the person. Before he knew that it was an entity, he was trying to chase the person, and the moment the person crossed past a dead end, he just disappeared. Then the second story is when he heard a singing a soft melody song, and at that moment he just got hypnotized and he basically couldn't snap out of it. He just felt the urge that maybe he should just find out what it was. Why is she calling me? Is there maybe if I climb over, will I be safe? Maybe she would save me. There's probably so many thoughts running through his mind at that exact moment. But if you think about it, that entity or whatever there was just trying to bring him to his death. And if you think about this story, about the first story and the second story, what if the person in the first story, the entity in the first story, was actually lured in by the entity in the second story? So if you guys don't know about this, something about the sea lah. There is some religion, I think a few religion that believe that the water holds one of the basically the biggest and the worst of all the demons in the water. That's their like their palace, their whatever you can call it lah. Their castle, their empire is built in the water. So that is their spot, their place. And I've heard this from a friend of mine personally that there are actually deaths that are unreported out at sea. And it's so sad because if let's say the person doesn't have a next of kin, then his generation just ends there. So personally for me, I don't think I can work in the marine industry because being, I don't know, I'm not claustrophobic, but if you ask me to stay there for 6 months, it's a bit hard because I will feel so restrained because you're in the middle of the sea, you can't escape anywhere. Maybe when you reach the next country, then you can go and explore and go to that place, but the time probably on sea is way longer than the time on land. I'm guessing lah, but if I'm wrong, do correct me. But this story about the lady singing is been heard in Western stories, Eastern stories, Southeast Asia. There's always this same storyline where there's a singing, there's a humming where people do hear, and when the sailors go out and see, there's nothing, it's just pitch black. So is this a trend, or I don't know, what do you guys think it is? Comment down below because I'm quite interested in this, because every single sailor in different ethnic backgrounds or whatever country lah, they always have this exact same experience. So if you guys have this experience, would you go and dive down to see? So that was the second story of tonight, and we have come to the final and the third story of tonight, where it's about urban exploring. Okay, so basically this isn't about urban exploring, but it's about exploring lah. Some people call it an adventure, some people call it exploring. So basically going to abandoned places or haunted places to just get to soak in the vibe and the thrill of it lah. So this person also went to a certain place, which later you will hear. This story isn't exactly very scary or what, but I think it's a bit creepy lah. So let's dive into the third story of tonight. So for the third story of tonight, the person have said that this happened a while back, but not too long ago. So I'm guessing maybe it's about 1-2 years gap. So this happened a while back when a few of my friends and I decided to go exploring. We were looking for a thrill, but since none of us knew any good abandoned spots, we figured the cemetery was our best bet. Now, I've always been a strong believer in the paranormal, but I've never actually spent real time in a cemetery at night. I genuinely didn't know what to expect. When we finally arrived at the cemetery, the sheer size of the place took me off guard. For those who aren't familiar with Singapore, the main cemetery complex is huge. Then you have it's divided into like Christian, then you have the Hindu cemetery, then the Muslim cemetery, and then you got there are even smaller subgroups that are buried down there lah, but everyone have their own places lah. And what we did was we decided that we are going to the cemetery. We all just packed into one car and we decided to explore the Chinese section first. So we parked, got out and walked around for a bit. The tombstone range from those simple structures to a huge structure, so I'm guessing that shows how rich the person is lah. Honestly, it didn't feel super eerie at first. The strangest thing we saw was actually just a group of people kneeling near a grave late at night, praying beside a grave, and just beside them was a parked taxi uncle. My friends and I joked that they were probably praying for winning 4D lottery numbers. And honestly, it's not wrong lah, because there are people who still do it to this day. So after that, we didn't have much experiences in the Chinese one, so we drove over to the Muslim cemetery section. This part felt remarkably neat and well kept. So we stepped out of the car again, and that's when the first weird thing happened. One of my friends started hearing a faint sound. He kept stopping, so basically we were walking and then he kept stopping and asking us like, "Hey, you guys heard that? Eh?" Okay, then walk again. "Eh? You guys didn't hear that again?" So basically that was what he was doing. He just kept stopping, asking us if we heard a Not just any normal sound, but a baby crying. He said it sounded muffled and distant, coming in and going out like intervals. So basically he heard the baby crying like, so it was near and then far, near and then far. So at first he got annoyed because he was convinced we were playing a prank on him with a sound clip on our phones. But we all swore on everything that none of us were doing it. That was when we walked around a slight bend in the path and saw where we were standing. We were right in the middle of the baby grave section. The moment we realized what those small graves were, all of us stopped dead in our tracks. Even typing this out right now makes the hairs on my arms stand. A sudden heavy wave of pure sadness hit the whole group. Maybe it was just a natural emotional reaction to seeing the graves of young children. But it still didn't explain the muffled crying my friend had been hearing before we even knew where we were walking. So basically they were walking and then he kept hearing the baby's crying noise, but it was so distant and he thought that someone was playing a prank on him. But the moment they turned to the left and then they realized that actually where they were standing was all full of babies' graves, that's when they realized that it wasn't a joke, or he realized that it wasn't a joke anymore. So we turned around and just head back to the car, and that's when I personally experienced the second encounter, this time with my very own eyes. A short distance away, standing near the tree line, was a figure draped head to toe in a white cloth. It was completely still, just facing our direction. My heart dropped because I know superstitious. I'm superstitious. I know the paranormal, and the moment I saw that, I know that it was actually a pocong. So a pocong is basically a deceased person wrapped in the white color cloth, the shroud that people get wrapped in before they get buried lah. And so basically what he said is that the wrap shroud of a deceased person that remains tied at the head is what makes a pocong. So basically what they do is that when they bury the person, they will remove the string from the top of the head. But if they forget to remove the string from the top of the head, the spirit gets trapped inside the white cloth lah, basically. So when I saw that thing and then I was staring at it, I reached out to tap on my friend's shoulder to point it out. So he just went and wanted to tap. But the fraction of a second I looked away and looked back, the figure was completely gone. The visual is still burned into my mind. Thankfully, nothing seemed to have chased us. So we got back into the car and now we drove over to the Hindu section. But this time we didn't even get out of the vehicle for this one because the atmosphere surrounding the section felt ridiculously heavy. So just by reaching that place, they felt uncomfortable. And by far the worst energy out of the 3 places they have visited. So what we did was we just rolled down the window as we slowly drove through. As we passed a small shelter hut, a couple of us saw someone actually sitting in it in complete silence. Not moving, not doing anything, just sitting still. While the others didn't see anyone at all, we didn't stick around to investigate, we just drove back home. So for the first week, nobody experienced any real paranormal activities or disturbances after visiting the graves. The driver did mention having some odd dreams, but nothing major. We thought we were in the clear. So everything was all okay, but then, bam, then came the accident. Exactly 1 week later, our friend was driving his car when another driver ran a red light and T-boned him. He was extremely lucky he slammed on his brake just in time, so the incoming car hit the front part of the car instead of directly into the driver's side door. So after hitting the front side, the other car spun a full 360 degrees. So if my friend had just moved 1 foot further in front, or he didn't manage to brake, he probably wouldn't have survived. But he walked away without a single scratch. But the car was completely wrecked and had to be sent for massive repairs. It was his first ever car accident, and naturally we started wondering if he had brought something back from the cemetery. He was of course skeptical at first, writing it off as bad luck or sheer coincidence. But then we remembered the photos we took on the night of our visit. So we pulled up the pictures we had taken of his car parked inside the cemetery grounds, zooming in on all the grainy photos. Then all of us went silent. Clear as day, there appeared to be 2 faint reflective eyes sitting in the back seat. And right above the roof of the car, there was a strange glowing orb. Whatever was standing in that cemetery didn't follow us on foot. It seemed like it climbed into the back seat and hitched a ride back home with us instead. Fortunately, my friend survived the crash, but it taught all of us a serious lesson. Even if a place feels quiet or you think you're just having harmless adventure, negative energies and unseen entities are real. Always respect the boundaries of a place like that, and always cleanse yourself and your vehicle whenever you visit somewhere you shouldn't be. So that was the last story of tonight. Okay, so I need to drink some water, but that comes to the last story of tonight, where this person actually went to the cemetery and they didn't have much experiences if you think about it, because okay, the baby crying one was actually pretty creepy lah, and then followed by the lady seeing the pochong. So these 2 experiences is what they felt at the Muslim cemetery, and at the Chinese cemetery they saw someone asking for 4D, or maybe allegedly lah. So we cannot just blame and say that they are asking for 4D, but looking at what the taxi and everything, I'm guessing it is for 4D, basically asking for numbers. So at night sometimes you can see some people kneeling down by the graves and then asking something. They were doing some prayers lah. Maybe it's just prayers, maybe it's really asking for 4D. No one would ever know lah, because unless the person wants to tell you straightforward that yeah, he's looking for 4D numbers. So then the last one was the Hindu cemetery, where this was when the things get a bit weird. So I personally have been to a Hindu cemetery and the vibe is honestly quite heavy. I don't know what's with, maybe the place is still a bit old, that's why it feels a bit heavy. Whereas for the Muslim cemetery, I understand why it's well kept and everything, because the Muslim cemetery is there's an ongoing exhumation where they remove the bodies and then they shift them to a new location lah. So basically the next of kin will come and identify the bones. So basically they just make sure that the person is present, then they'll take the bones and then they'll go and bury it in the new location or whatever that's remaining down there lah. So for Muslims, what they do is that once, I think it's 10 or 15 years or 20 years, they will move to a new grave, where this new grave will be stacked with 7 or 8 of 8 people lah. So basically it's a mix of people, or you can technically buy a lot if I'm not wrong, where you can have all your family members in one place, if you have 8 people that have passed away lah. But of course that's why it's very clean and very new, because whatever that you are seeing now is all the new places and the new graves, so it's still pretty new and well kept. But if you have been to the old cemetery where people have died in 1960s, 1950s, 1970s, that had really a different vibe. Whereas for, I think, the Hindu cemetery, they still have a place to bury, So I think they haven't really exhumed the graves. So the place is still old. And recently, I learned something new from Supernatural Confessions. If you guys are fans of Supernatural Confessions, I am a fan of Supernatural Confessions as well. Or I'll call him SC for short lah. So when I was watching one of their lives, Eugene did mention that there is a tree that they dedicate to a deity which is called Kali Ma. So Kali Ma is basically Kali lah. Kali is one of the deities over there. So if you go and Google search Kali, you'll probably see how Kali looks like lah. Kali is a goddess. So Kali also looks pretty scary lah. I honestly, it's just to me, she looks very scary. So like it makes me not want to do mistakes or not want to do sins. But yeah, the Hindu cemetery, there are some experiences where I've heard that, like this story mentioned that they see people sitting down there, and when then they have a second look and the person just disappears. Then there is this, I think there's a special place that people always see entities over there, but I'm not exactly sure where it is lah. But there is this place where people always see entities. So the cemetery is a very crazy place because now it's just overrun by all foreign workers where they do the cleaning. Let's say if you go down to the graves and then you see that it's overgrown, you can call them and you can pay them a fee lah. Depends. Sometimes it's cheap, sometimes expensive, depending on the condition of the graves. And if you haven't been to the graves, I don't recommend you to go to the grave because, like the person said, graves or going to these kind of places sometimes brings bad luck to you because you bring the negative energy that is there over to your side. So when you do that, like this person, he got an accident 1 week after going to that place, and before that he had no accidents before prior to this, but after going for this event, for this adventure, he got into an accident. And after reviewing the pictures, I didn't get the pictures lah, but I hope if you're listening to this, then you can send me the pictures. But after listening to the pictures, after seeing the pictures, they realized that they saw a pair of eyes in the back seat and also an orb floating right above the car. So my question is that if there was an entity at the back seat and there were friends packed into the car, were they sitting beside the entity? So that is something for you guys to think about lah. But basically, we have come to the end of today's episode of A Dark Tale, where the stories get real dark real fast. Again, thank you guys for all your feedback because every single feedback matters to me. And if you guys think that maybe this episode is slightly better, do comment down below. Maybe the sound is softer. I tried to do the softer sound. So when I'm doing the softer sound, honestly, I don't hear anything in these headphones at all. So I'm hoping that when the video comes out, it sounds better and you can hear the sound effects. But hopefully I don't have to re-record it again, fingers crossed. But yeah, thanks for watching this video till the end. If you are here, then you're a real one. And if you came from the episode 11, do watch the other episodes as well because it will help the account gain traction. And also do comment down below like you did in the previous videos because it helps me. So the next comment that I want from you guys is mainly what is a topic or a theme that you guys want me to cover. So I'll try to find and shortlist stories that I have for you guys so that you guys can maybe get a theme. I stopped doing themes for some time because it's very hard to get a lot of stories. So maybe I have 10 stories in my storage and there's only like 2 stories with the similar theme. Like today's story, you have 3 stories that is totally different from every single one is from in the sea, one is in the graveyard, another one is something else. So now you guys have I have a task for you guys lah, basically. So if you guys can help me help support this channel, the main thing is I need your stories. If you guys have any stories, if your friends have any stories, head down to my TikTok page, Dark Tale, and DM me your stories over there. I can accept your request and then we can talk over there. But I also have just got a spare number that I'm thinking to put as a WhatsApp number so you guys can WhatsApp and it's easier for you. But I will see how the response is on TikTok first, since there's been a surge of new subscribers. If there's more stories, then I will switch to WhatsApp, where it will be easier for you to communicate with me, so that when I ask you questions, I can get a reply back and then form a story lah. So if you guys have a story of your own, don't forget to share it with me. So we have come to the end of the video. Again, this is a dark tale where the stories get real dark real fast. And if you guys enjoyed the video, do leave a thumbs up, leave a feedback. It doesn't matter if it's a bad feedback or good feedback, leave a feedback for me. And most importantly, out of all of it, is send your submissions in to my TikTok lah, so that we can have more stories and more episodes. Because I'm planning actually to make these episodes like 1 hour long, where I can go more in depth into the stories, but I need to have stories lah. So your task for my task for you guys is that submit your stories to me, because that is the one that keeps the channel alive. So let's end this video with thank you, and I hope to see you guys next week with a new episode.